This conference will now be recorded.
In yesterday's session, we were discussing about what is persistent volume, what is persistent volume claim, what is static volumes, and what is dynamic values. As of now, is Kubernetes cluster, the current Kubernetes cluster, whatever we have, is it capable of creating a values dynamically? Do we have any storage class configured as of now? No. So if any persistent values are requested, any persistent values are created, if there is no values available, is that PVC will get any storage, any volume? No. As an admin, we need to manually provision those values. Now, I'll show you how to set up the storage class. How to set up the storage class, I will try to explain here. Now, I already have a NFS server. I already have a NFS server. Can I use some kind of a provisioner which will create a persistent volume of type NFS automatically using this NFS server? If I configure one storage class, that storage class is capable of creating that persistent volume object using NFS type automatically. Now, let me demonstrate that. Now here, I don't have any storage class configured. In this Kubernetes cluster by default, I don't have any storage class. Do I have any storage class configured in this cluster? No. Now, by configuring a storage class is kind of a one provisioner. It is going to provision the persistent volume automatically. Now I will configure that NFS provisioner. So there is a concept called NFS provisioner for Kubernetes. Now you can deploy that NFS provisioner. So this NFS provisioner will try to create a persistent value. This NFS provisioner is automatically going to use your existing already configured NFS server. This NFS provisioner is going to use your existing and already configured NFS server to support dynamic provision of persistent values. Now, if I deploy this NFS provisioner, basically storage class is going to use existing NFS provisioner. Is that storage class is that NFS provisioner is going to use existing NFS server to create a persistent volume of type NFS? Yes. So this can be deployed using Helm. Or without Helm also using this manifest files. Whatever I have, I can apply those manifest files and create. For our students, to make the thing simple for our students, what I have done, I have this YML as part of one running nodes itself I have given. So this YML, whatever YMLs we have here, that NFS related stuff, whatever that provisioner I have to deploy, I have given that as one running nodes. So let me provide that here. So GitHub, in our GitHub Mithun Technologies, there is one file for your purpose. I have created one YML. In that PVC, there is one YML here, NFS provisioner. Now using this NFS provisioner, if I create a YML and if I deploy this YML, is that NFS provisioner, that storage class will be configured? If you see this YML, am I creating a storage class here? Am I configuring a storage class here? API version, this one, kind storage class. the name of the storage class. That storage class is configured using which one? What is the provisioner is used to configure this storage class? NFS provisioner. This NFS provisioner, am I deploying that as a pod again? Am I deploying that as a pod here in my Kubernetes cluster? That NFS provisioner again? Yes. Using this image, I am creating a pod where I am creating a NFS provisioner. Now here, do I need to make sure I update the IP address of my existing already configured NFS server here instead of this IP? Do you need to update your existing and already configured NFS server? There are two locations which you need to update. So let me take that NFS server private IP address. Let me take that NFS server private IP address, this one. One location is here, another location is here. And also, do I need to update this NFS shared directory, whatever I have configured in that existing already running NFS server? What was my NFS share? I need to update. Is this correct? Is this correct in the current setup? No. So I have something like this, mnt nfs underscore share, something like this. It is there. Again, in how many places I need to update here? Again, two locations. Now I am configuring a storage class using this provisioner. So the provisioner name, this one, whatever name I am using here for that environment variable, same name I am using here as a provisioner name. Whatever name I am using here, that I am using here as a provisioner name. Now storage class is configured with this provisioner. And why do we need all these things? Why we need to have a service account again? Why we need to have this role? And why we are binding that role with that service account? Because this provisioner, this NFS provisioner, is it going to create PV objects manual automatically? Is it going to create that PV persistent value objects? And is it going to update persistent value claims automatically? Is this provisioner is going to create persistent values? And is it going to update PVCs, persistent value claims? Yes. So do we need to have a permissions for this provisioner to create a values, update the claims? Otherwise it won't work. So how we are granting permissions? Again, as we discussed last time when I'm explaining metric server, again, RBAC. Am I creating one service account with this name? Now, am I granting permissions here for PVCs, for persistent values? For persistent values, am I giving create permissions, delete permissions, list watch permissions for persistent values? For persistent value claims, get permissions, watch permissions, update permissions. For storage classes also, permissions we have given. So since I am creating a permissions, and I am binding these permissions with this service account using this role binding, and this service account I attached with this pod. This pod manifest, I attached with the service account. So does this container, I mean to say, does this application, does this provisioner will have access to the Kubernetes APIs to these objects, these permissions as per the given permissions? Yes. If I don't do this, if I don't attach the service account, then even though I have a NFS provisioner, that NFS provisioner will be able to create PV objects programmatically. PVCs can be edited? No. So this is my whole manifest. Where I updated my NFS server details here, my NFS share. One more important thing here, am I marking that as a default storage class here? Am I marking, is it a default storage class? Am I saying true? Which means if anyone is creating a PVC, there is no PV available, and at the same time there is no storage class mentioned in the PVC, does this storage class will create a value for those PVCs? Is this will be used as a default storage class for the PVCs where we have not mentioned which storage class to be used, and there is no PVs available for that PVCs? Does the PV will be created by the storage class because of this default? We are marking that as a default. Yes. Now let me deploy this one. Let me create a manifest. As a Kubernetes admin, I am creating a storage class. Storage class will offer what type of storage you want to create for your values. We are configuring. Now let me apply this NFS storage. Now all the required Kubernetes objects are created. Now that is, I think, running in Cube system. Cube system. L is missing. Now, do I have that NFS provisioner also running as a pod? Now, do I have a storage class created? Do I have a storage class? This is the storage class name that is marked as default. This is using this default, provisioner. Now, this is going to create a values. So, what is the reclaim policy for these values, whatever created by this storage class? What is the reclaim policy? It will be applied on that PV object. What is the reclaim policy which will be applied on that PV object? For these dynamic values, reclaim policy is delete. Will I able to customize this one while creating a storage class? The storage class create values, but can I change the reclaim policies instead of delete? It should do kind of a retain. Is that possible? Yes, you need to pass some parameters for the storage class object. You need to pass some parameters. So that way you can change the reclaim policies. Now, since it's a dynamic storage, like a reclaim policy will be delete only, it is recommended. Now, let me delete this application. Whatever application I am running, let me delete this application. So deleting this application, is it going to delete PV, PVCs, whatever this is using? Is it going to delete that respect to PV, PVCs? What if I'm deleting this application is using some persistent values, persistent value claims? Is it going to delete those from the cluster? I deleted that application. Is it going to delete those PV, PVCs, whatever it is using? No. Now let me delete this PVC. kubectl delete PVC. Now I am deleting a PVC. What will happen to the associated PV? The reclaim policy is retain. So is it going to delete this PV? I am deleting this PVC. This PVC is associated this value. It is not going to delete. Now let me delete the volumes also to demonstrate dynamic storages. Let me delete the volumes also. Now I don't have any volumes. PV is not there. I don't have a PVC. Now if I deploy this application it is creating a PVC. It is going to create a PVC. That PVC we are using in our pod manifest. But this time, because of that storage class, does that PV for this claim will be automatically created by that storage class, because that storage class is marked as default storage class? Now, as I already told, if I have a multiple storage classes, can I say from which storage class it has to provision also using this option? So if I have a multiple storage classes, I can mention the storage class name also, which storage class it has to use, which storage class it has to use to provision the storage. I can give, if I have multiple storage classes, I can give something like this, storage class name, something like this. If I don't give also, if I have some storage class which is marked as default storage class, is the value will be provisioned by that storage class for this claim? Now, do I need to create the PV the way we created yesterday manually? Do I need to create the PV the way we created this object manually? Now, do I need to create this object manually? No. Who will do this for us? Who will do this for us? The storage class, the provisioner. Now, let me demonstrate that. As of now, do I have any PV, guys? I have a storage class. I don't have any PV. I have a storage class. Is that storage class is marked as default? Yes. Now, I am going to deploy the database application, stateful application. Now, I am just using same concept, PVC, but I don't have any PVs. Now let me apply this, kubectl apply -f, that application. Now if you see, who created this PV? Now I can see one PV. I can see the PV. Who created that PV? Is that PV is created by that storage class, which is marked as a default storage class. Now we just created a PVC. We just created a PVC. The guy who is deploying the application, he's created a PVC. Is that PVC, I mean to say, for that PVC, is the value got created automatically and assigned? Now any other application, let's say I want to deploy one more application like Jenkins application, another stateful application like Jenkins. Can I create a PVC for Jenkins pod? Can I use that PVC for my Jenkins pod? PV will be automatically created and assigned for that Jenkins also, like any other stateful application? Yes. Now if you see, let me go to NFS server. This is my existing NFS server. This is my existing NFS server. If we go to this existing NFS server, now can I see one subfolder created? Can I see one subfolder created in that NFS share directory? This subfolder, this subfolder. Now, is this subfolder mounted with the database pod now? From this NFS, is this subfolder? You see, it is something like this: namespace name, namespace name, the PVC name, some random number. Now, is this subfolder is mounted with that database pod from this NFS server? Is this subfolder mounted to the database pod? Now, is database is mounting the files to this one? Is it started writing the files to this one? One second. Let me see if my pod is in running state or what state. Let me see. kubectl get all -n test -ns. My pod is still in a container creating state. My pod is still in a container creating state. Let me see what could be the reason why it is still in a container creating state. Again, guys, that for failed to resolve server name or server name or service not known. One second, guys, because of that hash is there, right? Let me recreate my storage class. Let me recreate my storage class. It is considering this one also. One second, just to make things clear. This is fine. I think it is taking that hash also. That's why it is saying name or service not known, some kind of error we are getting. Let me see. Name or service not known. In which node this is assigned? In which node it is assigned? This is assigned to 206. 1 second, guys. kubectl get pv. Let me describe that pv. Let me describe that pv. This pv, whatever pv created by that storage class, let me describe. It should not take this one. Now, what I'll do? Let me read apply my storage class. Let me read apply my storage class. There is a problem. kubectl get all -n test -ns. First, let me delete this. I'll delete this application. kubectl delete rs. This replica set. First, I'm going to delete -n test -ns. Now, let me delete that pvc also, because that is not properly provisioned. kubectl delete pvc. Now the reclaim policy is delete. So the moment I delete this pvc, is that associated pv will also get deleted, that pv object. Yes, associated pv also gets deleted. Now let me modify my storage class. Because of the reclaim policy, the associated pv also gets deleted. Let's wait for some time. Now let me delete whatever I have applied. That storage class, I'll delete that complete class. All the resources whatever I have created, that storage class, I'll modify few things. So here somewhere there is a problem here. This hash represents comments, but I have given like this. It is taking this one also because there is no space given. So that's why it was taking this one also. Now I have fixed that. Let me read apply. Let me read apply my storage class and all these provisioners. Now I deleted completely. Now there is no storage class. There is no storage class. If you see, there is no provisioner because I deleted all these things because there was a problem. There was a problem. Now there is no storage class. There is no provisioner. Now I deleted whatever PVC it has created. Now that PVC should have deleted PV also. But why it is not deleted? Because of that wrong configurations. Because of that wrong configurations, it is not able to delete. Let's see if I can delete like this. I am manually deleting because of the wrong configurations. It is not able to delete. I manually deleted. Now there is no PV, there is no PVC. I updated my this provisioner because there was a typo here. I fixed that. Now let me apply this. Now I created a storage class again. I created a storage class again with the proper configurations now. With proper configurations. Again, everything is empty. I don't have any PVC in that namespace. I don't have any PVs. Now let me apply. kubectl apply -f. That Spring application I am applying. Now PV is created. PVC is created by us. PVC is created by us. For that PVC, this PV is created by storage class. Now let's see my pod status. Let's see my pod status. Is my pod is using that value, whatever is provisioned by that storage class. Now, if I go and see here, if I go and see here, now this one, the new one, it has randomly generated this directory. Now, if I see, is your database pod is started using that this one? Do I have some files created in this subdirectory in that NFS share directory? Now, is database is writing all your data files to this location, NFS server, this NFS share, within that NFS share, this was the folder created for that value. Is it started writing the data here? Yes. Now, similarly, if I want to deploy another application, let's say I want to run Jenkins also as a container. Is it possible for me to run Jenkins also in Kubernetes instead of running Jenkins in a virtual machine? Is it possible to run Jenkins also as a container, as a pod in Kubernetes? Can I do the, instead of virtual deployment of my Jenkins, can I do the pod deployment Jenkins? Can I run my Jenkins also as a pod instead of virtual machine? Guys, if required, can I configure, can I use containers as agents to your Jenkins? The way you added agents, machine agents, can I use pods also as agents or containers also as a agent? Yes, you can do all those things also in Jenkins. That is out of my scope, our scope. Now let me show you. I have an image. I have an image in the Docker Hub. I have image in the Docker Hub. That Jenkins image. Now using this Jenkins image, will I able to run my Jenkins also as a pod, as a container in Kubernetes? Now they are saying this is deprecated. Use this one. There is another registry. The registry name itself Jenkins. The repository name is also Jenkins. LTS is a tag. They are saying use this one. Use this image. So they are deprecating in the favor of this one. Now they are asking us to use this one. This is the registry. This is the repository. You have lot of tags. That LTS stands for what? LTS stands for latest stable release. Latest, not latest. This is not latest. Latest is different. This LTS is different. LTS stands for latest stable kind of a stuff. LTS and latest is not equals, guys. This one and this one is not same. This LTS and this one is not same. They are giving tag as LTS. Now they are asking us to use that image. Now can I create a deployment or replica set using that image to run Jenkins also and one of the Kubernetes cluster as a pod? But if you want to run Jenkins also, are you going to run your Jenkins pods along with your application pods in the same Kubernetes cluster? You are not going to do that. Even though you are trying to run Jenkins as a pod, you will not run your Jenkins pod along with your application pods in the same Kubernetes cluster. Can I have a separate Kubernetes cluster where I will have only DevOps related applications, DevOps related tools running as a pods? Yes, you can do that. No, but the concept here, I am going to create a deployment or replica set, whatever it is, for Jenkins. Now, Jenkins, something like this. Now, can I use that image, that Jenkins registry official image, Jenkins registry repository tag? Now, what is the port On which port Jenkins will run? 80, 80. Now these labels, something like this, Jenkins app or Jenkins like this, you can give, I can give like this, Jenkins like this. Now I'll resource request and limits. I'll request something, request CPU. Let's say I'm requesting 200 millicore. Memory, I need minimum, maybe minimum 256 required. Limits, I'll say maybe 512, it can go something like this. Now I'm going to deploy this as a pod. Let's consider I created lot of jobs, I installed lot of plugins. If the Jenkins pod is deleted and recreated, do you have all those plugins, all those jobs, your build history, your workspace? If the Jenkins pod is deleted and recreated, do you have all the Jenkins data? If this is deleted and recreated, no. You will lose the state. You will lose the state. Now, if I want to maintain the state of this Jenkins, I want to maintain the data of this Jenkins. Do I need to use volumes concept again here? Volumes concept again here. There are two things. One is volumes. Another one is value mounts. Name of the volume, I'll say something like this, Jenkins val. Here, instead of using NFS, instead of using host path, can I use a concept of persistent volume claim here? Something like this. I'll say Jenkins PVC. Now, can I use that volume here as a volume mounts? As a volume mounts name. Whatever volume name you are using, that is your volume mount name. Here, mount path. What is the mount path? To which directory I have to mount? Is it always like this? Is it always like this? No. So do you need to mount to the directory where Jenkins is going to write the data in that container? Your container directory, container file system, where it is going to write the data. So how do I know? How do I know where exactly it is writing? What is the Jenkins working directory? If I want to know, can I read more about this Jenkins official image? This Jenkins official image. Mamata is saying varlib Jenkins, but that is not always. That is not always. If you see, if you understand the official Docker file, whatever used by that Jenkins image to be created, what is the Jenkins home directory they are setting? There is one environment variable called Jenkins home directory. What is the home directory they are setting? Is it varlib Jenkins or is it var underscore Jenkins underscore home? Var underscore Jenkins underscore home. So which means, is this environment variable be used by your Jenkins process to write all the Jenkins related data like plugins, jobs, workspace, everything? So that is depends on your environment. Now if you see, they are saying, so they are saying inside the container, inside the directory, it is going to maintain the data here, varlib Jenkins. Sorry, var underscore Jenkins underscore home. Can I use that as a mount path here? Can I use that as a mount path here? Now, your Jenkins container will write the data to this path in the container. That path is mounted with this value. So is it going to be maintained in the whatever storage I'm going to get for this claim? Will it be actually maintained in that storage, whatever I'm going to get this for this claim? Yes. Now, if I deploy as is, will I get an error saying that PVC not found? Will I get a message saying that PVC not found? Now, since you are deploying this application, do you need to raise a request for volume using PVC? Do you need to raise a request for storage? Like how much storage you need, what type of access mode you need? Do you need to create a persistent volume claim? This is my claim name. This is my claim name. So how much storage you need? Let's say I need 2 GI or 3 GI. This value mode is not mandatory. You can leave this. Something like this. same namespace, in whatever namespace. Let's say I have a namespace called DevOps NS or Jenkins NS. Let's say I have namespace called DevOps NS or Jenkins NS. If I create a namespace like this, can I deploy this in that namespace, DevOps NS or Jenkins NS like this? Now I'm just creating a claim, but now since I have a storage class configured, will I get a value for this claim automatically created by that storage class now? Dynamic values, yes. Now one more thing which I want to create here, to access this Jenkins from outside, do I need to create a service for this Jenkins also? Service, Jenkins service, your labels as a selectors here. What labels I am using for my pod template? Jenkins. Port. This port can be 80 or 8080, that is service port, target port. But if I want to access outside, what type of service? Now, node port. Now, do I need to have this service also in the same namespace? Whatever namespace I have, that can be like this. But as of now, do I have this namespace created? If I apply this, will I get an error saying that? Will I get an error saying that DevOps NS not found? If required, I can create a namespace also. If required, I can create a namespace also. API version, kind, spec, kind, namespace, kind, namespace, API version v1. This is not spec, this is metadata. Now here, can I give name like this? DevOps NS. Now if I want to add any labels for that namespace, like labels. Now I'll say team, DevOps team, something like this. Something like this. Tools, kind of a metadata. Something like this. Anything, any key value pair for identification purpose. This is declarative way of creating a namespace. If I want to imperatively also create, can I execute that kubectl create ns that namespace name? Whatever way you want to do this. Now I'm just creating a PVC. Now does PV will be automatically created because there is a storage class? But to demonstrate this application, let me scale down the other application because I have a lot of applications already running. To demonstrate this application, I'll try to scale down the other application. I'll try to scale down the other application. This is a Spring App application. Now I'll try to scale down because do I have enough resources available in my cluster to run multiple applications? No. So instead of two replicas, I am creating only one replica for this application. But in real time, are you going to make sure you have enough servers, enough CPU, enough memory available in the cluster to deploy all of your applications with as many replicas as you need? As many replicas as you need, if you want to deploy, you'll make sure you have enough servers. Now I have only one replica of this database, one replica of this application. Now I'm going to deploy this Jenkins also, one replica, only one replica. As of now, do I have that namespace? The DevOps NS? No. Now I am creating all these things in a single YML. But can I, for a better maintenance and readability, can I have each and everything in a separate YML? This one in separate YML if you Want to have a better readability, this one in a separate YML for better readability and maintenance. Yes, it's up to you. It's up to you. That doesn't matter. Now let me apply this. I may get a error. kubectl apply, but a dry run can I do if I want to check whether it will work or not? Dry run equals to client is there, server is there. Now everything is perfect. Since it's a dry run, namespace is not actually created. That's why is it saying error for that other three deployment PVC and service? Is it saying namespace not found? Because this is just a dry run. Now let me do client side validation. So it is not actually verifying with the server. Only kubectl itself is doing the validation. Now is it verifying that YML manifest only? It is not verifying whether that resources are there in the server side. So when I'm using this server option, is request is went to the API server and is it doing the kind of a dry run over there? Yes. When I'm using this client option, is it doing within kubectl, within client only? It is not actually verifying with server. It is just verifying the manifest. Now let me apply this. Now I have PV. Is this PV created automatically? Is this persistent value? Is it created automatically now? Who created that PV automatically? Storage class. Now is that PV is used by this PVC? Is that PV is used by this PVC? Is that PV is claimed by this PVC? Now that PVC is a namespace specific. Now do I have that PVC created? Do I have that PVC created in this namespace DevOps NS? Now is that PVC is used by your Jenkins pod? Is that PVC is used by your Jenkins pod? kubectl describe pod. kubectl describe pod. I am describing this pod which is there in this namespace. Now we have a value. Is that value is basically a reference to the persistent volume claim in the same namespace? This is Jenkins PVC. This volume is mounted with this directory. Now I have a Jenkins pod. Now Jenkins is writing all its Jenkins related files in this directory, Jenkins underscore home directory. Jenkins underscore home directory it is writing. Now is all these files are actually written in that NFS storage? Now this is my NFS server. If I see mnt NFS share, now can I see one more folder, that namespace name, PVC name, some random name? Now do I have all these files? That Jenkins is writing all the data to this NFS storage. Now can I see all these files? Whatever I see in the Jenkins home directory, is it actually written into this mount? Now whatever I see here, is it there? Can I see same thing? It is not a backup. Is your container directory is mounted with this storage, so it is actually maintaining the files here. Now I'll access Jenkins using that service name, service port 32072. Let's say I want to access this Jenkins from outside. Any server where I can open that port. Let me open that port. That port I'll open 32072. Now by using that server IP address, wherever I have opened that port, that node IP and node port, this node IP, public IP, and that respective port, when I'm accessing, am I able to see Jenkins homepage? Since I'm creating this for the first time, do I need to configure this Jenkins, get the initial admin password? Now, if I do the normal cat here, will I get that password? Where is that password? How to get this password now? Can I execute kubectl exec, that pod name, that cat command on that one, that Kubernetes pod, that cat command here? Otherwise, if you check the logs also, kubectl logs of the data, that Jenkins pod. Now, can I see that initial admin password? Can I see that initial admin password? This one. Otherwise, you execute kubectl exec, exec. Instead of ls, what I'll do the cat on that location. I no need to go inside also. This is my password. This is my initial admin password. Now, whatever plugins I am installing, whatever jobs I am going to create, whatever credentials I am going to create, does all these things will be part of that varlib Jenkins? Is that varlib Jenkins is mounted with your different storage like NFS? Even though my Jenkins pod is deleted and recreated, do I have everything? Whatever is part of my last Jenkins pod, will I again have the all the jobs, all the configurations? So, are you guys clear? If it is a stateful application, do we need to use this volumes concept? If I want to run any stateful application in Kubernetes, do I need to use volumes concept, and how to use volumes? With respect to volumes, what is PVC, what is PV, what is storage class, what is access mode, what is reclaim policies? Are you guys clear? I am just taking few or one or two use cases, but for based on your requirement, if you want to run any application, kind of any stateful application, are you going to leverage all these concepts like a deployments or services, PVCs, namespaces, resource request limits, volumes, volume mounts? Are you going to leverage all these things based on your requirement? Yes. So that is how it works. Now it is taking some time because I have given very less resources, just a 256 MI, very less CPU. So that's why the performance of this Jenkins is little less. It is little slow. Just to make the things clear, I am explaining all these things. Is everyone clear, guys? What is PV? What is PVC? Shall we go to the next topic? Is everyone clear? The volumes we were discussing almost for last 2.5 days, almost 3 days. This is very, very important when it comes to the stateful applications. Now, let's understand some other concept called config maps and secrets. Config maps and secrets. Config maps and secrets. I'm going to stop this one. I'm going to stop this one because it doesn't have enough CPU and memory. So that's why the performance of that Jenkins is little slow. kubectl top nodes, kubectl top pods. We have a metric server also running. So it is having very less memory, right? I just given less memory, so the performance is little slow. You can leave that. For now, let me delete this kubectl. Guys, if I delete ns, is everything will be deleted? Whatever is part of that namespace, like PVC, service, pods, deployments, config map, secrets, whatever you have created in that namespace, I'm deleting the namespace itself. I'm deleting that namespace itself. Is everything is deleted? the deployments, the persistent volume, claims, the services, all those things. Yes. Now, since my application itself is deleted, now I will get some error because this is not reachable now. Because I don't have that namespace itself, that applications itself. Now, since the reclaim policy was delete, since I deleted namespace, within that namespace PVC was there, is that associated PV also got deleted? The associated PV, that Jenkins persistent volume, whatever we created for that by storage class? Yes. So this is how it works. Now let's understand the concept of config maps and secret. Let's understand the config map and secret. What is config map? What is secret in Kubernetes? Application configurations. Application configurations. Is it going to vary from one environment to another environment? The configurations of your applications. Is it going to be vary from one environment to another environment? Like a database usernames, passwords, your application properties, your settings files, like any XML file, YML file. Just to give an example, any settings file like XML file, YML file, or your properties file, or your database credentials like usernames, passwords, is it going to vary for one environment to another environment for which the applications which you are deploying? Yes. So do we need to externalize? Do we need to externalize the application configurations from your application code to reuse the same package to be deployed in all the environments? Do I need to externalize as a developer? Do I need to externalize my application configurations from my application code so that I can reuse same package to deploy in multiple environments? Yes. So when I was using Docker, we have already done, using environment variables or using bind mounts, using environment variables or using bind mounts, am I able to pass the key value pairs environment variables at runtime? And also, is it possible for me to attach files also to my container from outside, like any configuration file like XML file, YML file, property file? Is it possible for me to mount from outside, from my server to the container, like any XML, YML property file which your application is using? Yes. So the application configurations, will vary from one environment to another environment. It will vary from one environment to another environment. So application configurations will change between environments, like dev environment, different configurations, staging environment, different configurations, production environment, different configurations you will have. And you want your applications to be portable. You want your applications to be portable. And it is good practice to make container images reusable as possible, So which means you should be able to use same image, you should be able to deploy, or you should be able to same image for development environment or stage environment or production environment. But application configurations will change. Let's say you have some XML file. Just to give an example, let's consider your Tomcat server.xml or your Tomcat users.xml. Now that application configuration, that servers.xml or users.xml, I want to have a different for each environment where I am deploying. Suppose while creating a image itself, if I make the changes, in that server.xml or user.xml or any property file, while creating an image itself, if I make changes and if I have that image, if I try to deploy that image, is that configurations will be same in this environment, this environment, this environment, if I do in the image itself? Yes. I mean to say, while creating an image itself, I have done the configuration changes. Now, is it going to be same file same XML file in this container, in this container, in this container, wherever you are deploying? Yes. Now, is there a way where we can externalize the things if it is a files? In Docker, using bind mounts concept, did I explain? Suppose I have a server.xml in my server here. Will I able to mount that file using bind mounts to the container? So if I have some changes here, is this file will be used by your container? Now in this server, if I have a separate server.xml where I have updated some configurations, and if I mount that from outside, will I able to pass configurations as a files? Will I able to mount my configuration files from outside of that container? Will I able to mount files also? I have explained using bind mounts in the Docker. That is one thing. One more thing is environment variables, like a key value pairs. If it is a key value pairs of data, can I use this -e at runtime? At runtime, can I pass environment variables if your application code is reading from environment variables? If your application code is reading from environment variables, your script is reading from environment variables, I can use -e option. But if your code is reading from the property files, XML files, can I use bind mounts? Can I mount that file from outside to the container? Yes. So let's consider this is dev environment. Can I have a separate server.xml with whatever configurations in this server.xml or user.xml? Can I mount that from this dev server to the container which is running in this server using value mounts, that bind mounts? Yes. For production, can I have a different settings in that server.xml? Will I able to mount from the server that server.xml file to your container which is running in the production server? Yes. That is files. That is files, configurations as a files. Otherwise, if your code is using environment variables, can I pass environment variables at runtime using -e option when we are using Docker? Yes. So it is a good practice to make your container images as reusable as possible. You should be able to use same image for stage, production, dev environment. Now, sometimes in the interviews also they're asking this question. Are you creating a Docker images for each environment individually? Are you going to have a Docker image, separate Docker image for dev, separate Docker image for stage, separate Docker image for production? No. Same image, but when I am deploying in the respective environment, will I pass my configurations as an environment variables, as a files using mounts concept? Yes. But if the developer hard coded everything in the code, is it possible for us to reuse that same images in all the environments? If the developer is not written a code in such a way that he is not reading from environment variables, or he is not reading from property files or XML files, then is it possible for us to reuse the same image? No. Now, as I already told, you should store configurations like database connection details, passwords, or API keys outside of your application code. So we need to externalize the things. We need to externalize the things that will change from environment to environment. Does it keeps our code portable? Does this will keep or help us to keep our applications portable if I externalize the things by referring from environment variables or property files or XML files? I can keep this application reusable, portable. So this is critical in Kubernetes world where your applications are packaged as a images. Now, with the Docker and containers, we can keep these configurations out of the image. I mean to say, developers will not hard code the configurations. Instead, will they able to refer or use environment variables, or will they able to read from some files like property files, XML files? Then at runtime, can I pass environment variables to the container, or can I mount the files also to the container from outside if your code is reading the files properties from that file? Yes. We have already done this in the Docker. We have already done in the Docker. But when it comes to Kubernetes, there is a different way of passing. There is a different way of passing these configurations to your Kubernetes pods containers. That is what? That is what? We have a config maps and secrets. Does this config maps and secrets will help us to pass the configurations to your pods, your containers? Yes. So config map is again one Kubernetes object. Config map is again one Kubernetes object. Config map is again one Kubernetes object. So using config map, we can maintain two types of data. One is key value pairs of data. I can create a config map with key value pairs of data, or I can create a config map with a multi-line string, a kind of a file content. I can create a file content, multi-line strings, or key value pairs of data. Config map is one Kubernetes object. The config map, the Kubernetes config map in Kubernetes is one object. So config map is one Kubernetes object used to store non-confidential data. Non-confidential data. Config maps will be used to store non-confidential data, non-critical or non-confidential data that can be stored in a key value pairs. Then does the pods will be able to consume these key value pairs, whatever I am creating in the config map, as an environment variables or command line arguments or configuration files as a values? Yes. So does this config map allow you to decouple environment specific configurations from your container images so that your applications are easily portable? Yes. So we can use these config maps to maintain the configurations data. Just to give an example, let me take this YML. Let me take this YML. Now, let me take very simple application. I don't want to make things complex here. Let me take this simple application. Now I am deploying this application. Let's say these values I am already passing as an environment variables, but instead of passing like this, can I create a config map for these values? Instead of directly passing values here, can I refer from the config map here? Because now let's consider I want to deploy same application in QA, same application in production, same application in dev. But do you think is this usernames, password, these type of values will be remain same for all the environments? Does these things will be remain same for all the environments? No. Now, let's say I want to deploy for QA. Again, do I need to modify this one and apply? Yes. This way, I need to duplicate these resources. Now, instead of doing like this, can I create a config map? Config map. Config map is again one Kubernetes object where we can maintain data in a key value pairs and file data also, something like this. Can I create a config map? API version v1 kindis config map data key and value, key and value, key and value, like a key value pairs. Now can I use these config map keys? Can I refer these config map keys as an environment variables or command line arguments in my pods, something like this? In environment variables, in my pod environment variables, instead of directly hard coding that value, can I refer from that config map? I created a config map like this with key value pairs. Can I use this config map key value pairs? Can I refer that config map key value pairs in my pod container environment variables or command line arguments? Is it a decoupling? Is it decoupling your configurations from your pods this way? Now, I can create a config map like this. Just to give an example, let me demonstrate for this application. Instead of hard coding in my pod manifest like that, can I create a config map? Let's say config map some name, Spring App, config, key value pair, any key value pair, any key value pair. Can I give ABC XYZ? This is ABC, this is XYZ. Can I give test anything, something like this? This is a key value pairs of data. Can I create a config map like this, key value pairs of data? Then can I use this config map keys in my pods, environment variables? Instead of passing like this, can I refer from the config map, this key here, instead of directly passing like this? Yes. So here I can create a config map with any key value pairs of data. Let me give something like this MongoDB username. I will give my username something like this, devdb, MongoDB password, something like this, devdb @123. Don't use hashes. Hash will be considered as a comment here, something like this. devdb 123, something like this. Config map. I'll create a config map also in a same namespace where my application, I am deploying my pod. Now I have a config map like this. Now here in my pod manifest, in your containers, can you refer those config map key value pairs inside your container command line arguments or environment variables also? Like this is your pod here. If it is environment variable, instead of directly passing value, can I refer something like this, value from config map key reference? This is the name of the config map. This is the value. Now internally, is Kubernetes is going to get that value from this config map, from that key, and pass it to that environment variable internally? Yes. I can pass, I can refer this in environment variables, or you are using some command line arguments. This command. Here in the command line arguments also, can I refer that config maps? Yes. In the environment variables or in the command line arguments, you can refer those key value pairs. Those key value pairs, whatever you are defining like this. Now something like this. I don't want to hard code. Can I say something like this, value from config map key reference name of your config map? Can I use this name, whatever name I have used to create the config map? Can I use this config map name here? Value from config map key reference, name of the config map key. What is the key? Can I use this key, whatever key I have used here, the data key value? Can I use this key, whatever I have given here? Now is internally Kubernetes is going to get the value from this config map, from this key, and will it pass to this environment variable internally by Kubernetes? Yes. Now similarly here, instead of hard coding like this, can I do something like this, value from config map key reference, name of the config map, name of the config map, whatever you have used. Now key, what is the key? Can I use this key, whatever I have used here, something like this, MongoDB password? There is a typo, that is fine. MongoDB password like this. Now wherever I am using, let's say here also, other also, can I do same thing like this, value from config map key reference, name of the config map key, what is the key? So name of the config map is this, name of the config map is this, and the key, whatever key, this key, this key. Now similarly here, value from config map key reference, name of the config map, Name of the config map is this one. Name of the config map is this one. Key, whatever key, something like this. Now you are externalizing the configurations from your pods by referring the configurations from config map. Now let's consider, without creating this config map, if I try to deploy like this, do you think your pod will work? Do you think your pod will come to running state? Do you think your pod will come to running state? No. So you are referring a config map, you need to have a config map. Now let's say this is my dev cluster. In dev cluster, can I create a config map like this and deploy like this my application? Now let's say I have a production cluster. In the production cluster, can I create a config map with the different configurations? Prod DB, prod DB123. Can I create a config map with the different configurations in the production cluster like this? Now, if I deploy this application in the production cluster, if I deploy the same application in the production cluster, but I have config map like this, is your application configurations will be like this? Is your application is going to use these things in the production cluster? If I have a production, I created a config map like this, and if I deploy the same application in the production, is it going to use these values? These values? Based upon the changes in your configurations to environment, can I create a config map with those configurations, key value pairs or file contents also? This way, will I able to externalize the Kubernetes, I mean to say configurations from my Kubernetes pods containers? It's very important. We are going to use all these things in the applications if you are using Kubernetes. Are you guys clear what is config map? Why do we need config map? What was the problem without config maps and secrets like that? Because as I told, environment to environment, your configurations will change. Do I need to externalize the configurations from my applications, my containers? Yes. Now, I want to deploy like this. I want to deploy like this. I want to deploy like this. Now, I don't have a config map. For now, let me delete that application. Let me delete that deployment and replica set, whatever I have, kubectl get all. Now, let me delete that replica set. As of now, am I using that config maps concept in this pods? As of now, no. Let me delete that deployment also. Deployment is fine because if you recreate, it will delete and recreate. Delete deployment. This deployment I am deleting just to make sure you are clear about the concept. Now I don't want to hard code like this. I don't want to hard code like this. Whatever it is, like key value pairs, your environment variables. Now instead of this way, now can I do something like this? Delete everything. 1 to 105. Now can I have something like this? Can I refer from config maps as a key value pairs in the environment variables? Now if you see, without creating a config map, is it possible for me to refer like this? Is it possible for me to refer that like this without creating this config map? Is it possible for me to refer like this? Now if I try to deploy, do I have a config map? Config map. This is also one Kubernetes resource. Do I have any config maps for that application? This is created by for some other purpose. Do I have a config map with this name in that namespace? As of now, no. Now let me try to apply that. Let me try to apply kubectl apply -f Line number 34, there is a problem. Indentation. Line number 34, here you have a problem that indentation might be hidden tabs or spaces will be there, guys. Now let's see. 35, we have a problem. Let me do one thing. Instead of wasting the time, I'll go to this editor. Here it will be easy for me to edit. Now here it will be easy for me. There might be some hidden tabs or spaces that won't work. I think it is not completely copied. 1 second. It is not completely copied. It is not completely copied. It is copied only from line number. This one only. One second. Let me copy one by one. So here there might be some indentation problems also. Let me copy one by one. There might be some hidden spaces, hidden tabs that will cause the issues. Now service is also, let's take this service. Let me take this one. Now let me take other one. These two. Now this is because of resources. That is fine. You can ignore that one. Let's do the YML validation. YML validator. This is not going to check any keywords, guys. Only the indentation and other stuff will be verified. Yeah, it's a proper YAML now. There is no issue. Now let me do that. Now let me do the dry run first. Kubectl apply -f spring app pvc - dry run equals to client. Now I have still issue in one of the manifest, that is deployment is there, service is there, API version is not set for this one. When I copy pasted, there is two A's. There are two A's available. So that's why let me do this try run. Yeah, perfect. Now I don't have any config map, but I'm trying to refer a config map. Now I'm trying to deploy that application. Now if you see my pods in which state now, the new status, what is the new status of my pods now? You can see create container, create container, create container, config error. Why this error? How to troubleshoot? Why I have this error? How to troubleshoot? Why I have this error? If I want to troubleshoot, can I do something like this? Describe a pod and describe your pod and verify. Why it is in that error? What it is trying to say? What it is saying? Error. Config map, Spring App config not found. Why I am getting this error? Because am I referring something from that config map? If you see environment variables, am I referring from that config map? Is this environment variables are pointing to this config map? But again, there is some typos. So do I have that config map? Do I have that config map created in my cluster? Do I have a config map in that namespace with that name? No. Now there is some typo. Let me correct that typo because username and password both are I'm pointing to the same key. So here it is fine. Username I'm pointing to username, password I'm pointing to password. But in another here, both are I'm pointing to same key, but that is not correct. So username, I'll point to that username only. MongoDB username. Now I don't have a config map, so that's why we are getting the error. But since it's a replica set, it will not work, guys. You need to delete because I have changed the some keys. I need to delete that replica set because I have changed some configurations. I delete that replica set. I need to apply. Now I don't have a config map created. I don't have a config map created, but I'm referring that config maps in my pods. In my pods, I'm referring that config map because there is no config maps available. The pods are in that container config error. Now, can I create a config map like this? You can do declaratively or imperatively also. Using command line also you can do that. Using command lines also you can do that. Now I am doing it in a declarative way, something like this. If it is my dev environment, can I create a config map like this with the dev credentials? These I am using in my pod environment variables. Now I'll create a config map like this. kubectl apply -f that config map in the same namespace. Now I have a config map. Do I have a config map now with that name Spring App config in that namespace? Now is this config maps are used in your pods where you are referring as an environment variables, whatever key values you have created here. Now if you see, since that config map is created, now is my pods are using that config map and those values as environment variables, and is my pod is running state? Yes. Now same application, if I want to deploy in a production, can I have a production config map created like this? And can I deploy this deployment, replica sets, whatever it is in the production cluster? This is key value pairs. This is key value pairs. Similarly, any files, suppose I want to mount as a file, property file, XML file, I don't want to directly edit inside my pod, inside my image, inside my container. Is it possible for me to mount the files to my pods from outside using this config maps? Yes. So you can create a config map with file content also. You can create a config map with file content like this. Any property file, XML file, this is multi-line string. This is multi-line string in your YML. I can have some property file, XML file, YML file like this, the content of file here. Now, Can I use this config map as a value like this? Can I use volume of type config map, volumes of type config map here for my pod? I can use that as a config map as a value where I am referring the content, whatever file I am using here, that I am giving that details here. Now, is this value can be mounted with my container like this? Value mounts this value, that config map value to this container. Now, is this file will be mounted to this path inside your container if that application, if that image, if that application is reading something from this property file from that location. Now, am I able to mount files also from outside to my applications using this config maps as a values? Any property file, XML file, YML file, any configuration file. So this way, can I use config maps as a values also, not only just using as a key value pairs in the environment variables or command line arguments. Can I use this as a values also to mount file content or files to your pod containers? Yes. So we can use this. I will explain this config map as a file later. Now the way we have a config map, do I have a one more Kubernetes object called secret? The way I have a config map, do I have a one more Kubernetes object called secret? Now config map is one object. The config map is one object. The way I have a config map, do I have a one more Kubernetes resource called secret? Secret. So what is the difference between config map and secret? What is the difference between config map and secret? This is also asked in the interview. What is the difference between config map and secret? When I'm maintaining data, key value pairs of data or file content as a data, if I am maintaining as a config map, is it going to be maintained in an encrypted format in Kubernetes in etcd? No. So in etcd, in Kubernetes etcd, data store, database of Kubernetes, is that config map content will be maintained in a plain text format, human readable format? Now I created a config map. When I execute kubectl cm in the short form cm config map, in the short form cm config map, in the full form config map. Now if you see, I have a config map. Is this config map content is maintained in an encrypted format when I am describing the config map? Is it maintained in an encrypted format or human readable format? That key value pairs of data, human readable. Now when I get something like this kubectl get config map -o YML, I want to see that config map in a YML format. Now can I see that in a human readable format, the data, this is your key, this is your value like this? So config maps are used for maintaining or storing what type of data? As I told in the beginning itself, in the definition, it is used to store what type of data in a key value pairs or file content? Non-confidential data. Suppose you have some confidential data. You want to hide confidential data in Kubernetes. What Kubernetes object can be used? If you want to hide that confidential data in Kubernetes, what object can be used? Secrets. Now, if I am maintaining that key value pairs or any data, any files as a secret, does that Kubernetes will maintain in an encrypted format, some kind of a base 64 encoding or any other encoding? Yes. So secrets are used to store what type of data, guys? The way we have a config map, there is a Kubernetes secret. Secrets in Kubernetes. Now, secrets in Kubernetes. Secret is again object that contains a small amount of sensitive data such as passwords, token, your certificates, keys, your CRT file, CRT keys. So it is sensitive data. So how to hide confidential data in Kubernetes? Which object I can use? Secret. Sometimes in the interview they are going to ask. In Ansible also, how can I hide confidential information in Ansible? In Ansible there is a concept called vault. Similarly in Kubernetes, can I use secrets to store the confidential data and refer that secrets in my pods as an environment variables again? As an environment variables again, can I refer the secrets which is created in Kubernetes? Yes. Maybe you might be using this one, but some enterprise applications will have a different way of managing the secrets. There are different tools like a central servers. You might have heard about HashiCorp Vault. So this is again kind of one secret management tool, HashiCorp Vault. So this is kind of a altogether different concept. Some applications might be using, they are creating a secrets in HashiCorp Vault, and you are integrating your HashiCorp Vault with Kubernetes so that you can read the secrets from Vault, HashiCorp Vault. But this is very complex process. If your application is using this one, you need to use this one. Otherwise, can I create a secrets within my Kubernetes using this secret object instead of using another tool, another central tool where I can maintain the secrets? I can use these secrets in within Kubernetes. So if I want to hide confidential data in Kubernetes, can I use secrets concept? Yes. Now, if you see, can I consider this as some confidential data? Can I consider this password as some confidential data, that config map, whatever config map where I have created that password? Can I consider this as a confidential data? Instead of creating like this, can I use secrets to create some confidential data? And again, Kubernetes supports different types of secrets again. Kubernetes supports different types of secrets again. Kubernetes supports different types of secrets. Different types of secrets. There are different types it supports. One is key value pairs of secrets, types of secrets. Types of secret. When we are creating a secret, we can specify what type of secret it is. So there are some types like opaque queue, arbitrary user defined data, kind of a key value pairs of data. I can create a secret of type opaque queue. Let's consider I want to maintain my SSL and TLS certificates. Can I consider that SSL and TLS certificates content also as a confidential data? Your certificates, your SSL certificate keys, CA file, key file. Yes. If you want to maintain that SSL and CLS and SSL, TLS and SSL certificates also in my Kubernetes, can I create a secret of type this TLS type secret? Now let's consider you are using Docker private registries. You are using Docker private registries. Does your Kubernetes needs to authenticate with your registry to pull the images if they are in a private registry? Now in that case, can I consider my Docker registry credentials also as a confidential data? Can I consider my Docker registry credentials also as confidential data? Now, can I create a secret of that Docker config? Can I create the secret of Docker config? So, can I use that secret in my pod manifest? Can I use that secret in a pod manifest so that that secret will be used by your kubelet to authenticate your registries? So Kubernetes secret has different types: TLS type, opaque queue type, Docker registry type, SSH keys, basic auth. Different types of secrets is offered by Kubernetes. I will explain that a secret of Docker registry, how to authenticate with private registries. I will explain tomorrow session. But for now, let me demonstrate this opaque queue, user data, arbitrary data, like a key value pairs. Now, something like this. Instead of maintaining that as a config map, can I create as a secret like this? Can I create as a secret like this instead of referring as a config map? Can I create that as a secret instead of config map? The type opaque, the type is opaque, the type is opaque, string data. Again, key value pairs. Now, once I create this secret, when I describe the secret, when I get the secret in a YML format, will I able to see this in a human readable format in Kubernetes? No. Now, let me separate that one. Let me separate that one. Now, the way I have a config map, I want to have some confidential data. Now, instead of having as a config map, can I create a secret? Maybe another YML, or in the same YML, can I do like this? If you want to do imperatively, can I do like this? Creating a config map like this, creating a secret like this. If you want to do imperatively, you can do like this using commands, or declaratively, can I use like this YML? If it is multiple, I can have multiple key value pairs. If it is multiple, I can have multiple key value pairs like this. Imperatively. If it is declarative, something like this. Secret. Something like this, secret. So I am creating a secret like this in same YML or another YML. Now MongoDB password secret. Now instead of referring from config map in my YML, can I refer from secret that password? Now can I refer from secret that password instead of referring from config map? Can I refer that from secret here instead of config map key reference? Can I say secret key reference? That name of the secret. The name of the secret. Suppose my secret name is this one. I created a secret like this. Can I refer that name, secret name, and a key? This is the key. This is the key. String data. Something like this. Maybe in another location also. Instead of config map key reference, can I refer from secret? Secret key reference. The name of the secret. The name of the secret is this one. The key. Guys, here it is a string data. Here it is string data I am using. Now, like this. Now, without creating that secret again, will I able to refer? As of now, do I have a secret with that name? Again, is the scope of the secrets and config maps, is it a namespace level? Is it a namespace level? Is this resources or works at a namespace scope? Yes. Now I don't have a secret. First, let me create a secret. Let me create a secret. Let me create a secret. Now, do I have a secret also created in that namespace? I have not mentioned the namespace name, guys. I have not mentioned the namespace name. So since I have not mentioned the namespace, in which namespace this secret got created? Default. So it won't work. It won't work. Let me create a secret in that namespace only. Now, do I have a secret? Now, if I describe the secret, or if I get in a YML format also, am I able to see that actual values? Is it actually showing that? When I get YML also, kubectl get secret, that secret name is this, -o YML, -n this namespace. Now am I able to see what is that secret basically? When I'm getting in a YML, it is showing, sorry, when I'm getting in a YML format, it will show. But will I able to restrict? Will I able to restrict the access to this config map? Who can create? Who can modify? Who can view these secrets using RBAC concept again? Using RBAC concept, is it possible for me to grant permissions? Who can edit these config maps? Who can view these config maps again? That is possible. That is possible. Okay. I can apply a security at that config map RBAC policies. Okay. Now I have a secret. Now if I apply this one, since I am using deploy, some objects are managed as a replica sets. Do you think is your parts will be recreated by using those secrets? Does this part will be recreated using those secrets? No. But if it is a deployment, it will work. If it is a deployment, it will work. If it is a replica set, to use those secrets, do I need to delete that replica set and again recreate? Now kubectl apply. I am doing like this. There is a indentation problem. Let me fix that problem. Let me fix that problem. Indentation problem is there, not here. That spring up, that YML. There is some indentation problem. Secret key. It is not map. There is a typo here. Secret key reference. Secret key reference. And another location also secret key reference. Correct. Now let me apply. Now is my pod is referring something from config map? Is my pods are referring something from secrets? Now in production cluster, if I want to deploy, in my production cluster, if I want to deploy, can I create a config maps and secrets with whatever configurations I want to create and deploy that? This way, will I able to externalize the configurations which is going to be changed from environment to environment? If your application is using environment variables, I can use this approach. If your code is reading something from environment variables, I can use this approach. If your code is reading from some property file, XML files or YML files, can I use these config maps and secrets as a values? Can I create a config map with file content? Can I mount that config map as a volume to my pod container? Yes, that is also possible. That I will demonstrate tomorrow, guys. That I'll demonstrate tomorrow. I'll create a config map with file content, and we will see how to mount those config map as a volume to the pod container. I'll show that tomorrow. So these are very, very important topics. Do we have all these use cases when you are working in actual applications? All these config maps, secrets, concept, all these things. If you understand, is Kubernetes is making the things very simple for developers and operations teams, development teams and DevOps teams and that operations teams to manage your applications, configurations, communications, volumes. It is helping us to manage your containers. It is helping us communication for your containers, and it is helping us to maintain the data of your application using volumes. You can pass your configurations using config maps and secrets. Is it taking the abstraction away from development team and operations team to manage all these things? Yes. Are you going, we are going to use all these things in the applications based on your requirement. Is it mandatory like this? All the applications will you use config maps, secrets, volumes for any pod you are deploying? Are you going to use all these things? No. Based on your requirement, based on your use case, are you going to use all these concepts? Based on your requirement, your application, you are going to use all these things. So that's it for today, guys. Tomorrow, I'll show you how to use config maps as a values. And once that is done, I'll go to one more important concept, very important concept called liveness probe and readiness probe. liveness probe and readiness probe. Tomorrow I'll discuss this one also. Thank you guys. That's it for today. I'll try to continue this one tomorrow. And make sure you are going through the recordings multiple times. Make sure you are practicing so that it will be easy for you. All these concepts will be very simple if you go through the recordings multiple times, practice the same thing multiple times. You can understand troubleshooting also. Easy to remember, easy to explain, easy to troubleshoot, easy to clear the interviews, easy to manage your work also. If you are already used, if you are already practiced all these things, if you have a similar requirements or same type of use cases in your actual application, will it become easy for you to do all these things in the actual projects, actual Kubernetes clusters and applications? Yes. But practice is required. Dedication and practice is required. So try to practice as much as possible. Thank you guys. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.